everybody, and welcome to this webinar for Introduction to UI and UX Design. I am Vyoma, and I am a UI UX designer myself, and I'm associated with Edifyself for all the courses and webinars related to UI UX design. Okay, so let's start. So the question that all of us want to know the answer to, what is really UI and UX design? Before I take you to the answer for that question, first I would like to take you through today's agenda. So here's a list of things that we need to do today. That is a very long list, and this is what we are going to do today. So first of all, there will be an explanation of what exactly is UI and UX designer, a little bit of explanation about the duties, why UI and UX designers are important in the market today, what is the difference that UI UX designers make to the products, the kind of demands and market awareness that is there, scope and prospects for UI UX designers in the industry as of today. A day in the life of a UI UX designers. Here I will be talking about the kind of processes you're expected to follow, the kinds of methods used, the tools and softwares you are expected to know, and your responsibilities as an individual in the company. I'll also talk about job and market avenues for this field, kind of compensation and perks that are expected, the kind of working environments you can expect out of your offices, kind of skill set and mindset you need to have, and a couple of case studies. Okay, so that is a very long list. Let's do it again in a slightly different way. So the agenda for today is, what exactly is a UI UX designer? Why designers are important, a day in the life of a UI UX designer, scope and prospects, the working environment, skill set and mindset, and a couple of case studies. So this time around, it felt a lot better, short and sweet, and not very overwhelming like the previous slide. Let's do it again in another way. What exactly is a UI UX designer? Why designers are important? A day in the life of UI UX designer, scope and prospects, working environments, skill set and mindset, and case studies. This time around, I can say that this agenda even looks better. So what I've done is I have added nice line spacing, and I have also bolded the first letter of each sentence, so it gives it a kind of good look. So now that we have gone through the agenda in 3 different ways, I think I can answer the question. When we are talking about the look of a particular thing, we are talking about the user interface. And then we are talking about the look and feel of a product. We are talking about the user experience. Before I go ahead with more explanation about user experience and user interface design, there's one important phrase that you need to know to understand these things. It is the cognitive load. Technically speaking, it is the amount of mental resources required to operate a system. And in simple words, it just means that how much a user who's using your product needs to think. The amount of mental resources he uses means how much he has to think, how much, like for example, if you have a mobile app design, how long does it take for a user to understand what he's supposed to click, where he's supposed to go next? So a product would be good, obviously, if the user needs to think minimal. So if the amount of cognitive load of your design is less, which means that the user doesn't have to think at all, your design is nice and obvious and very intuitive, it is a good design. Be predictable, avoid visual clutter, be obvious are certain things that you need to follow as a UI UX designer. I'll be talking more about that in later slides. What you need to remember right now is the term cognitive load. So now let's talk about user experience. So like I mentioned before, user experience is about how he's experiencing or how he feels when he's using a particular product. So this need not be pertain to just digital products like mobile apps or websites, but this can be any product, any physical product or anything in the world at all. So it can be presentations, videos, it can be restaurants, it can be flights. So there's a different experience that you have in different products. When you go to some Chinese restaurant, you're going to have a different experience. When you're going to an Indian restaurant, the experience is going to be totally different. So it is the kind of experience that you feel when you're going to these places. And that's what a user experience designer is designing for you. And if you think about it, if you like a particular experience that you had, then you would feel like going back to that place or that product. So that's why user experience is very important. So a user experience designer is thinking more of the experience that a user will have when he is using the product, rather than just thinking about designing the product itself. So there are certain questions that come up, like what would the product be? When would the product be used? Where will it be used? Why in the first place is the product is going to be used? How is it going to be used? And who is going to be using these products? So there are different answers to these questions, like who's going to use it? Are the user groups majorly men or women or children? Why they're going to be using it, where they're going to be using it, which part of the world are they going to be using it, whether it's going to be an indoor app, whether it's going to be an outdoor app. So there are different questions, and these questions are important for a user experience designer to answer. So a person who answers these questions is a user experience designer for you. Now coming to user interface, user interface is talking about the looks or the appearance of a product. And more so when you're talking about mobile apps or website, you're talking about how it is laid out. And we all know that if the first impression is good, you will be interested to actually go ahead and see what the product is and kind of feel like experience what the product is. So that's why user interface is also important. So a user interface designer is a person who decides how a product will look. He will decide what colors will be used, what fonts will be used, what kinds of buttons will be used, what shapes will be there, and all kinds of the cosmetic aspects of your mobile app or a website will be designed by the user interface designer. An important point to note is that the user interface designer is the person who makes sure that the user is attracted to your product and he actually feels like experiencing the product. So having said that, it's fairly evident that user interface design and user experience design are not totally very different. They are interrelated, and you need both for a product to be really good. And if you think about it, there are very big companies. If you talk about Apple or Google, there will be different teams of UI designers and UX designers. But sometimes when the companies are smaller, say startups, a single individual would be expected to do both of the things. And it's not really wrong expecting these two things out of a single person. Having said that, again, just designing a very beautiful product or a very nice experience is not important, because you're designing the product for some client in the end. And for a client, it is important to have some business output out of it. So knowing the business goals is also very important. And as a user experience designer, you're expected to fulfill the business needs as well as the user needs through your product. So this looks like a challenging task. It is. And there are certain ways and certain set methods that UX designers follow to achieve this particular sweet spot. So that takes us to how a day in the life of a UX designer would be, what he actually does to achieve this sweet spot. So like I said, there are set processes, and this process is called the UX design process. It is an iterative process. And if you think about a UI UX designer, you ever meet a UI UX designer, you'll probably find him busy in one of the steps of this process. So the process begins with digging and understanding. So there's things like user research, competitive research. So you're basically digging inside more to understand what the problem statement is, what kind of users are going to be there, what are your competitors, and things like that. Once you have that in place, the next step is starting to think and create something new. So you make architecture, you make wireframes, you make prototypes, and you carry out user testing. So you started to create something. Once you have something in place, the next step is beautifying it, making it beautiful, more attractive. Visual design is what comes in. And once that is done, the next step is delivering it to the next team, which is developers. So you understand the problem, create something, beautify it, improvise upon it, make a really good product in the end, and then deliver it to the developers. So you have to have a smooth handoff between the two teams. So let's take each step of this process one at a time to understand it more clearly. The first step is user research. User research is broadly classified into two terms: quantitative and qualitative research. Quantitative research is talking more about numbers. You would ask questions like, who are the users of the app? How many users are expected? How many of the users are males, or how many of the users are females? And things like that. So these are all questions related to numbers about the app or website. Then when you're talking about qualitative research, it is more abstract. Here, you're trying to understand what your users are, and you're trying to empathize with your users. So there are certain modes of research, like first of all, very important is listening to and observing your end users. So here, as a UI UX designer, you would be at times expected to go on field to see how the users are actually using your product or your competitor product. You need to understand the kind of environments your product is going to be used in. You need to understand how people are interacting with your product. You need to observe their actions, and you need to listen to what they have to say about the product or anything that's related to your product. This kind of getting into the shoes of the end users and understanding and empathizing with them. You need to conduct interviews also. So interviewing would have certain steps involved in it. You draft a questionnaire, you sit and ask the questions. You may ask them one-on-one, it may be group interviews or things like that. You could even conduct some online surveys, like, say, for example, your user base is spread far and wide across countries maybe. So you can use online surveys for the same time, set up some online meetings, or just send them online surveys through certain websites available online right now. So these are the different kinds of ways in which you can carry out the qualitative research, basically the goal being understanding your end user and empathizing with them. Once these research things are done, you can collect your data, and then the next important step is creating personas. So personas are sort of creating fictitious users for your product from all the research that you have carried out. You kind of make different kinds of users that could be there for your product and define their personas. So for defining personas, there can be a template. A very good template that I can talk about right now is defining these 5 things in a persona. The most important thing is the task. So when you're talking about tasks, you're talking about what this particular user is expecting to achieve through your product. So what is the task that he wants to complete using your product, app, or website? Next, you need to know what influences this person. For example, the kind of environment he is in, the kind of people he lives with, and the kind of weather that is there around there. Because all of these things shape the person, and they will decide what kinds of decisions he takes, what kinds of likes and dislikes that he has, and whether he would like your app or no. So that's why influences are important. Next, you need to know overall goal of the person. You need to know what this person ultimately wants to achieve, because that would define the kinds of apps he would use, whether he would be interested in your or not. Then you need to know the pain points. Pain points are nothing but the hurdles that a user is facing and what you need to overcome with your app. Then you need to know his feelings. This is more of empathizing, and this is more related to the experience design, where you understand what the user feels about your app, what kinds of experience he's expecting from your app, what matters to him, and things like that. So let's take a look at a live example. This is a persona that I had created for an intranet project. So this was a finance-based company, and so this one person, I had formed a middle-aged person who's been working with the company for more than 10 years now. His goals are to become leader of the sales department and help the company reach maximum sales. So his goals tell us that he would be expected more in the numbers in the website. Maybe he would want to look at the graphs or statical representations or something like that. His frustrations or pain points are inability to use computers like younger team members. So this is a very important point which tells us that our designs have to be simple and usable by a wide age group. So it's got to be interesting for younger team members, and it's got to be easy enough for elderly team members like Steve. Next, his frustration is it takes too long to find the required tools, and he finds timesheets format too complicated as they are right now. So these are a couple of things that you need to work upon in your design. So such kinds of personas are expected when you're carrying out research. Next step is forming the information architecture and wireframing. So now that your research is in place, you have understood the problem statement thoroughly, you know what kinds of users are going to be there. So now you're going to actually start working with the product. The first step is forming information architecture. Now, information architecture is nothing but just determining what kind of information needs to go into your product, where what will go, what kinds of users are there for your product, and which users would see what information. So you're basically kind of deciding the placements of the information in your product, the organization and structuring of your information in your product. So say, for example, let's take again an example of the intranet. So your intranet may have three different users: the admin user, a help desk user, and an end user. So all of these three people will see the landing page. From the landing page, they will have different logins, and then the pages that they'll see will also be different. So you're defining the structuring and organization of the information through your website. Once this is done, a subset of information architecture would be creating sitemaps. Now, many of us must have seen sitemaps because they are openly available in quite many websites. Sitemaps are nothing but deciding all the number of pages, all possible pages that go into your website, and how you would navigate from one page to another. Let's say, for example, you have a home page. From the home page, you have 4 different pages: about us, services, products, blogs. And then from there, there would be sub-pages. A sub-page of about us would be contact us. And there would be contact us even on the home page. So basically, you're trying to say that you can navigate to contact us from the about us page as well as the home page. This is a very simple sitemap. The sitemaps of websites can get very complicated, having like close to 100 pages, but it is very useful to help you understand how the navigation would happen and where information goes from one page to another. So that's why sitemaps are extremely important. So when you have this kind of information in place, the next thing you need to define is what tasks need to be achieved by your product, website, or app, and particularly how every task will be working. So workflows for every task. Let's take an example of login. So login is a task that needs to be achieved by your mobile app. So you'll first launch the app, there'll be the landing page. If the user doesn't wish to log in, he can go directly to the other pages. If the user wishes to log in, he has a login screen. If he's already a user, he can log in and go to the other pages. If he is not a registered user, he can, and he doesn't have an account, he needs to sign up. So here, so whatever steps are required in sign up, maybe confirm email address or get your sign up confirm, and then go back to the login page, enter your credentials, and you can go ahead to the next pages. So this is a simple workflow for a regular task like login and sign up. So you need to define all the possible different tasks that will be achieved through your product, and you have to define workflows for each of them. Once you have workflows also in place, you can start actually designing the product. The easiest way to start brainstorming is having sketchy wireframes, taking a paper and a pencil to get your ideas down onto the paper. So you basically sketch out whatever you think, how you think information can flow from one screen to the other, how the information needs to be placed, and you can discuss with your friends and you can your colleagues, and you can determine kind of wireframes of your product. So once you have that in place, once you have your ideas in place, you can start creating digital wireframes, which is the next step. For creating digital wireframes, there are a wide number of softwares available out there, maybe Azure, InVision, Sketch. So they allow you to create nice and clean wireframes. These are the first step, low fidelity wireframes. So you may use just gray and black and white wireframes. These help you to indicate how the data is going to be placed on your different screens. And there are also softwares out there which help you create interactive wireframes, which means that you can connect one page to the another. Say you click on the submit page, you can connect this button to another page and kind of indicate what you have in mind, what kind of workflow you have in mind. So why these digital wireframes are important is because you can share these designs with these wireframes with your users and your clients, and demonstrate the kind of workflows you have in mind. So with these digital wireframes, we go to the next step, which is user testing. So like I said, the digital wireframes you create are interactive. So you can hand them over to the users to carry out your first round of testing, a primary round of testing. You can see how they interact with the product. You can determine and you can understand whether the users are actually using your product like you intended them to. You can evaluate your design drafts with this, and you can understand whether your designs are intuitive enough, whether your placements of buttons and information is good enough for the users to understand without any explanation from your end. So this can be an iterative process. You get all the data and you get all the output from the first test. You go back, you maybe improvise upon your designs, you create new wireframes, and then carry out another round of user testing. So this helps you create robust wireframes, and you're sure that what you have in mind is in sync with what the users are expecting from the product and how they're actually interacting with the product. So once your wireframes are done, your basic experience has been designed. Now the next step is to beautify the product and carry out the visual design. So the first step is mood boards. Mood boards are nothing but a collage of all the different design elements that you wish to use in your final visual design. For example, here, this is a mood board for a mobile app or a website related to baby products. So there are some nice curvy fonts, curvy clip arts, hand fonts, and soft colors, blue and yellow, and pictures of babies, which you might use in your final design. So mood boards are important and they save your time considerably. Let's say you're designing this app for babies and you use brown color and this font in blue and design the entire app. You spend a couple of days designing all the screens, you show it to the client, and then you find out your client doesn't like brown color. So it's a personal grievance against this particular color. So if you knew this information beforehand, you could have saved a lot of time. So mood boards help you in this way. They help reduce the number of iterations and get to a final visual design fairly in shorter steps. So once you do mood boards, you create 2, 3 mood boards, you ask your client to select 1 or 2 of them, and then depending upon them, you can create a color scheme and a typography scheme that you would be using for your visual designs. What we generally do is we take up 3, 4 main screens from the entire app. We make 2 or 3 design variations for them, go back to the client, take their feedback. Once one of the themes is fixed upon, you can create visual designs for the entire app or mobile or website. And then you take these visual designs and create again a set of clickable prototypes. So these clickable prototypes will be very high fidelity prototypes which actually look like the end product. You can again use this for another round of user testing. You give these products clickable prototypes to your users. Now there are softwares which allow you to download and install, say, your designs for a mobile app onto your mobile phones, and you can hand over the phones to the users and see how they interact as if it were an actual product. So you get good feedback about your designs and your experience design at this stage, and then you can go back, do any changes that you have depending upon the feedback, and get a final product that is as good as a good final product and is liked by everyone as well, tested at this stage itself. So once that's done, your job now is to deliver this design to the next team, which is of the developers. So to ensure a smooth handoff between the design team and the developing team, there's a thing called as style guides, which you have to develop. So style guides are a set of documents which has all the possible information related to your design, be it pixel sizes of the interface elements, and information related to icons, logos, and color codes and everything. So here's an example of a nicely designed style guide. So here we're talking about the typography, the kind of sizes of the font that will be used, different styles for buttons, what happens when it is selected, when it is on hover, um, the kind of icons that will be used, your color palette, different form elements, date elements, everything. So basically you have to have every possible design element into this and make sure that the developers don't have to come back to you asking for something again. So that'll make sure that you have a smooth handoff between the 2 teams. So from these 5 steps, we can understand that UX deliverables and UI deliverables are fairly different. So what's expected as a UX deliverable is creating personas and user research reports. You have to create sitemaps, information architecture, workflows, tasks, wireframes, and interactive prototypes. So everything related to the experience goes in here. Uh, Tools of the trade, if you say that there are good software out there, there are many softwares out there. I've just mentioned a few over here. There's InVision, Sketch for Mac users, Azure RP, there's Adobe XD, there's InVision Studio again, there's Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, which is available for UX designers. UI deliverables would be more on the visual side, so mood boards, pixel perfect prototypes over here because you're handing them off to developers now, visual designs, style guides, and specifications for the developers. So Here again, you would use Sketch, InVision, Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe After Effects for some cool effects you can incorporate into your designs, maybe some blur out and animations of any kind. And then there are softwares like Zeppelin and also InVision, which help you create style guides easily and share them with your developers as well. So now that we know what is expected out of UI UX designers and what your responsibilities will be, I think you would also like to know whether it's actually worth all the effort. So if you think about all these successful companies right now, say Apple or IBM, Nike, Adidas. So what all these companies have in common is good design. So there's been studies carried out over 10 years, and what was found out that the companies which have a dedicated design department and they know that design is important, these companies have outperformed the other companies by an extraordinary more than 200%. And if you take a look at the kind of companies, there are software companies, Apple, IBM, there are consumer good companies, P&G, there's Nike, there are IT product companies, IBM again, food companies, there's Starbucks, hospitality, Starwood, there's shopping, Target. So what I'm trying to say is that from domains all over, companies are now aware that having a good design is very important. There's also some other general statistics, like, for example, and I'm sure even you must have experienced this in your daily life, like 38% of the people would not go on ahead by looking at your website if the content is unattractive. I'm sure you must have experienced that. You don't really feel like looking at non good looking or old kind of websites anymore. 88% of the customers are not likely to return to your website after a bad experience. Here, we could talk about, say, for example, Snapdeal. So there have been cases where people have been cheated. So people are not very comfortable with using Snapdeal. So Snapdeal is not as popular as Amazon would be. So it's a case of bad experience. 48% of the people said that a website design is a top factor in deciding whether the business is genuine or not. So if you know that the business is investing in good designs, you know that they want to do what they are doing and they're genuine. So companies are aware that design is important, so UI UX designers are in demand and they pay well for UX designers, UI and UX designers. So if you see, the average salary would be something like 36 lakhs of rupees. And in India, depending upon your experience, number of years you've been working, you could earn anything from 3 lakhs to 20 lakhs per annum. So if you have a good experience of say 20 years, you could be earning a good amount of money per month and per year. So it's a field that pays your efforts. And if you talk about working environments, a UX designer is not expected to sit in an office and sit in front of the computer all day. There are interesting things to do. You need to conduct interviews and you get output from the interviews. You have to discuss with your teams, analyze what outputs you got. Then you need to work on the computers and you step out again for user testing. So there's a lot of field work involved. There's a lot of teamwork involved. So you have good teams, you have like-minded people around you. So it's a lot of fun working as a UI UX designer. And like I said, UX is in demand, so companies go above and beyond to attract, retain, and motivate talent. So if you're a UX designer, you can expect your office to be something really nice and interesting like this, rather than the boring offices that you see every day, a set of computers and people just looking into the screen and working. So as a UX designer, expect your work to be really interesting and something different than just sitting in front of the computer. And another very important aspect of UI UX design is that you can work from home. So say you're sitting in India, you're working for a company in the US. So you have no expenses at all and you're earning sitting here in dollars or in euros or something like that. So it's a very good opportunity. So, and also working from home would give you a very good work and personal life balance. So I can vouch for that personally. Next, all that is good, you would say, but really, how would I know whether I have what it takes? So if you find yourself saying that I don't know Photoshop, I don't know what you said, I don't know Azure, I don't know Adobe Illustrator, I cannot draw. So I would say that you can always learn all of those things. What is really important to be a good UI UX designer is to have the right skill set and the right mindset. So you need to have a problem solving attitude towards things. So if you find yourself looking at people who are having a difficulty using a particular product and thinking that, well, I could just do one small thing and make it a lot better, then maybe you'll be a good UX designer. If you can observe the people nicely, you can listen to what people have to say about things, and you can empathize with the people. You can put yourselves in their shoes and understand what their problems are related to this product or any particular thing, then definitely you would be a good UX designer. And because rest of the things can be inculcated, you can always learn the tools of the trade. What you need to really know is how to be able to think in a particular way. So here are some simple examples which talk about good and bad UX design. So say you have to design a big form and you have to design submit, cancel, and save button. So it is quite obvious that you would make these buttons very different from each other. You would use high contrast between the positive and negative buttons so that the user doesn't get confused having these buttons placed close to each other. So you can see that it's not really rocket science. Next, say you are on the landing page of a certain website and you have the sign up and sign in buttons on this page. So if you say sign up and sign in, and if you design both of the buttons to be exactly the same, there's a high chance that you're going to be confusing the user. So if you use sign up and login, at least you're using different words there. So at least the reader will stop there and think that, hey, these look like two different things. So let me think what is to be done. So here you're still making the user think. So a good designer would make the two buttons appear totally different and sound totally different from one another. Register and sign in. So the user at a glance knows that these are two different buttons doing two different things. So this would classify as a good design. So like I said, these things are very simple. You just need to know how a user might think when he comes to your product. And if you see yourself understanding these examples, definitely you would be a good UX designer. So let's take a look at a case study now. The first case study that I'm talking about is about a physical product, not a digital product, the Heinz tomato ketchup bottle. So this is a quite an established design, a beautiful looking symmetrical bottle and a very nicely designed label. When you look at the labels, you first see Heinz because that's the highest font used, the biggest font used. Then you see tomato ketchup, and then you see the net weight of the product. So as a result, the designer is intelligent, and you are reading the way the designer wants you to read. So that's why hierarchy and typography is important. The Heinz company, they carried out user research, and in this research, they found out that their ketchup is something that the people really love, but they have a glass bottle and the glass bottle breaks. People store the bottle upside down when the ketchup is about to get over because it sticks to the bottom, and then taking it out is very difficult. So these two examples are of bad experience. So the company thought that they can do things to change and improve these experiences. So they got in the new design. This is again a very symmetrically designed bottle. The label, as I said, was very nicely designed, so nothing much changed in it. What changed is the bottle is now upside down and it's a plastic bottle. So what the user experience designer did over here is he changed the workflows. The first workflow of the original bottle was that you take the bottle, twist open the cap, turn it upside down, and then tap out the ketchup. With the new design, you just have to flip open the cap and squeeze out the ketchup. You don't have to turn it upside down. You don't have to keep tapping so that the ketchup comes out. So this workflow is shorter and much easier. So it's a better workflow, a better experience. Next, the experience was made even better with a squeezable bottle. So getting out, since it is upside down, getting out the last bits was also not important, not difficult. Since it was a vacuum cap that was provided with it, excessive sauce also was avoided, and it's a plastic bottle, so the bottle won't break. What happened because of this is that when it was a glass bottle, mothers won't let children handle the bottle themselves. But with a plastic bottle, it's much safer. So that kids could now have the bottle in their hands, and with kids, there was a lot more sauce being consumed. So the Heinz ketchup sale rose by a good 6% when the rest of the industry increased only by 2%. So this is a very good example of a business goal being achieved with a very good UX design. Next, I will talk about a more digital case study. So let's say our problem statement is adding a physical print option to Instagram. The first step is carrying out user research. So online surveys and actual interviews were carried out. The user groups are divided into 4 depending upon their age. So we have young people, middle-aged, and elderly people using our app. We asked some questions like, how often do you use Instagram? What do you use it for? Are there any other photo apps that you use? Do you order prints of your photos online? Do you share them online? And are you really comfortable making purchases online? Are you comfortable sharing your information for payments online? And would you actually use a physical print option if we provide it to you in Instagram? So from the surveys that were carried out, it was found that 95% of the people actually use Instagram, and 68% of the people would use this feature if it were available. So here we have kind of validated our idea. We have made sure that this designing this feature is not going to be a futile effort. So people want that feature to be there, and they would use it if we have that kind of feature. So next, we carry out some competitive research. Here, we're taking a look at Snapchat and Walgreens as our competitors. Snapchat because it's a very popular app, and it has nice intuitive interfaces and some whimsical interactions which the user are really liking. And that share feature also is something that's good and user-friendly. In Walgreens, they have a clear onboarding process, which means they have a nice tutorial for people to understand how their features work. There's good social interaction, and there's playfulness in their design. So with all of this research, we found that Instagram is a popular app. 70% of people use it daily. Users want the new feature to be familiar. They don't like new features to be something really out of the world. Simplicity is important. Don't waste user time. An important thing is be clear about any costs that will be there. They don't want to be told at the last moment that, you have to pay XYZ extra for this feature, and the payment should be easy. So summarizing, the users want familiarity, they want it to be simple, they want it to be quick, and they want the payments to be easy and clear. The next step is creating personas. We create two different people. First is a male user called John Doe, middle-aged, 28 years. He likes to share his life with friends through this app. He archives all his adventures, and what he wants is a feeling of security for his pictures. He doesn't want them to be publicly available. He doesn't want anyone that he doesn't want to be able to look at his pictures. His pain points are that he doesn't like the app to be feature heavy. He's scared about identity theft. He's not a tech whiz, but he can use the apps fairly easily. Next persona we create is of a female who's quite young, 23 years. She's a professional, and she uses this app as a way to connect with social network. She uses it for for sharing her creative marketing material, and also as a place to get inspiration for her work. She wants an easy way to be able to print her pictures. Pain points for her are a complicated signing process. She has to re-enter the payment methods again and again. So these are certain things that we can improve upon when we are designing this feature. Next is a sitemap. So this is quite a big sitemap. Like I mentioned before, the sitemaps can get quite complicated. So these are all the features that are already available in Instagram, and we intend to add our print feature to the profile page. So here's a close look at it. The user would go to the profile page. From there, he would navigate to the print page. Then there would be a page to select the images. He can add more and confirm the selections. Go to the cart checkout and confirm. Detailed workflows. We would have an onboarding because this is a new feature that we are introducing into the app. So you launch the app and have some tutorial screens and exit the tutorial. The actual printing process, it will start from opening the profile page, go to the print pictures list, select the pictures that you want to print, send them to the cart, select your billing information. This could be already existing, or enter a new billing information. Then enter your shipping address, an existing one or a new one, and then confirm your order. The next step is creating wireframes. First, created sketchy wireframes with paper and pen, and then digital wireframes with tools such as Sketch or Azure and whatever. The next step is converting these wireframes into something beautiful. Add colors and pictures and nice fonts and get a pretty visual design available. Okay, so that's the case studies done. Next, we talk about jobs. What are the prospects for you as UX and UI designers? So if you go out and do a search on websites like for UX design, you can see that there are a lot of vacancies out there at present. A lot of companies need UI UX designers. And what they would be looking out for is the proper UX jargon, a good resume, and a good portfolio. So you need these three things to be able to nail these available jobs. So how do you get them? So if you attend the course that Edifyself is offering, all of these things would be taken care of. We would take you through some good live projects, which would help you have a good portfolio. You can go to the Edifyself UX design course web page to know about the times when this course is going to be conducted, the starting dates, and also you can take a look at the course curriculum, what would be taught in this course.